Well, now that we have our program on the computer in source code, now we need to compile it into object code, let it be linked, and create an executable, and then run the executable. So let's do that on Windows first. We're going to compile and run our Hello World program that we just entered into the editor. We're going to do that with two commands, one cl space hello.c, and that's our compiler and linker, cl together. That's going to compile and link hello.c into object code, which we won't really see any file for that. And then it's going to create the executable. And it's going to assume that we want to call it hello. It'll take the first part of the file name, drop the .c off of it, and it's going to create a hello.exe on our Windows computer that we can then execute. So let's switch over to our DOS prompt that we created earlier. And there it is. It's same place that it was. Let me clear the screen here so you don't get too much of a peek. And let's look at our program. So we will type it out, show that it's still there. There's our pound include, main, printf, hello world, everything we put in there. And now we'll compile and link it. cl space hello.c. And there's our compiler starting up. And hello.c was our source code right here that went in, and there's our linker starting up. Remember that we have the compiler creating the object code, which is hello.obj. It's right there. And there's our linker that was automatically started up, and it was told to make the output hello.exe. That's all by default and automatic. And if we do a directory now, there it is. There's our original source code that we created, hello.c. And there's our object code that was just now created in the middle. And there's our hello.exe, our executable, which is 53K. So a lot of other code was brought in there to get this program to work. And now to run it, of course, we just type hello. And there's our output, hello world. And notice that there's a blank line after hello world right here because that's our new line that we had. We'll look at the program again. We had our \n, and that's the new line, and that's that blank line right there underneath hello world. So we see that we can actually enter a program, compile it, and link it. No errors. It did what it was supposed to do. Excellent. Now let's move on to our next slide here. And we're going to do the same thing, compile and run hello world in the Linux environment. And in Linux, we have two different ways that we can do this. One is with the cc hello.c. That's our C compiler. Remember, that's the same place as the GCC or G++ that we looked at. It's the same program that's going to be run, but we just use the CC because that's old school for a C compiler. And we'll cc hello.c, and then we run the program by executing a.out, because a.out is the default name of the executable produced by the Unix C compiler or Linux C compiler. A.out was the name of the default name of the output of the assembler that created the first C compiler back in the early 70s that we talked about earlier. So that used to be assembler.out or a.out, and the name is just stuck around. So that's why that's still there. And we need to tell Linux to run the program that's called a.out in the current directory, and that's the / that we put in front there. So /a.out will run our default output. Or we can direct the compiler to create an output file called hello, or of course whatever we want it to be called, with a cc space -o space hello, and that's what we're going to have our executable called, space hello.c, which again is our source code just like it always is. And then, of course, we run it with /hello because that's what we wanted our output to be. So let's switch over to our VMware Ubuntu environment. Let me make it full screen so we can see it. And here we have our program, source code, #include, standard.io.h. Everything's exactly the same, just the way we typed it in. Let's compile it. Now, in Linux, no news is good news. So nothing was said, so we assume that it did its job. And there's a.out sitting over there. So that's our executable, and we can run it. A.out, hello world. There's a new line because our cursor is now on another line underneath, just the way it's supposed to be. Our command prompt is down there. If we didn't have the \n, our command prompt would be up there off the end of the D of hello world. Let's do it the other form, cc --o to direct our output to hello, and then our source, hello.c. Again, no news is good news. We do an ls, and there's our leftover a.out from before. And now we have an executable called hello./hello to run it. And it also says hello world just the way that we assumed that it should. So now you've seen how to compile and run your first C program. You entered it, compile it, ran it, and next we will take a look at the program line by line so we make sure we truly understand what it's doing and talk about a few other things about that little tiny program and the importance of that little program to the bigger things that we're going to be doing.